Alcatraz, a prison no one ever escaped. Except in The Rock, one man did, and Hollywood turned him into a legend. Today we're cracking open 21 weird, true stories behind this 1996 classic, plus one bonus fact so strange it fooled a real intelligence agency into starting a war. Welcome to the Cell Block. Welcome to Rewatch Club. Number 1. The secret James Bond sequel. Here's a theory that refuses to die. Sean Connery's character, John Mason, is a former British agent, the only man to escape Alcatraz, imprisoned by his own government and left to rot. Fans have spent decades arguing that Mason isn't a new character at all. He's an aged James Bond, hiding behind a codename, and the film practically winks at it.
I'm an agent with the federal FBI.
When Nicolas Cage introduces himself, Connery deadpans, "But of course you are." The exact beat Connery's Bond gave in Diamonds Are Forever. Director Michael Bay has recalled Connery leaning in on set and whispering that he was, in his words, getting to be James Bond without being called James Bond. Officially, they're not the same man. Unofficially, every clue points across the water to MI6. Number 2, Arnold Schwarzenegger said no. Before Nicolas Cage ever strapped on Stanley Goodspeed's nervous energy, the role was offered to the biggest action star on the planet.
The rock star Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage as a convict and an FBI scientist who must team up to save San Francisco.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the mix to play the FBI chemist, and he passed, reportedly because he simply didn't like the script. Sit with that for a second. The part that became one of Cage's most beloved performances, a jittery lab guy who says things like, "How in the name of Zeus's butthole," was almost played by the Terminator himself. It's hard to imagine Schwarzenegger delivering that panicked, twitchy comic energy the way Cage does. Sometimes a rejection is the best thing that can happen to a movie. Arnold's loss became Cage's signature, and the casting swap quietly reshaped the entire tone of the film. Number 3, they filmed on the real Alcatraz. Most prison thrillers fake it on a soundstage. The Rock didn't. Michael Bay took his cameras straight onto Alcatraz Island and shot much of the movie inside the genuine, crumbling penitentiary. But there was a catch that would give any producer nightmares. Alcatraz is run by the National Park Service, and it's one of San Francisco's most popular tourist attractions, which meant the production couldn't shut it down.
The rock star Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage as a convict and an FBI scientist who must team up to save San Francisco.
So while Bay staged shootouts and chemical weapon standoffs, actual sightseeing tour groups were being shuffled around the island. Imagine paying for a quiet history tour and stumbling onto Nicolas Cage mid-firefight. That authenticity is a huge part of why the film feels so heavy and real. The walls aren't a set, they're the actual rock. Number 4. The hotel got flooded with panic calls. One of the film's early jolts is FBI director Womack getting dangled off a hotel balcony high above San Francisco. That sequence was shot on location at the Fairmont Hotel, using the building's real penthouse terrace for maximum vertigo. And here's the beautifully human part. Passers-by and guests who glanced up had no idea a movie was being filmed. All they saw was a man hanging off a balcony, seemingly seconds from falling to his death. The hotel was reportedly bombarded with frantic phone calls from people convinced they were witnessing a genuine emergency. It's a perfect little snapshot of how convincing practical filmmaking can be. So real that bystanders tried to save a stuntman who was never actually in danger. That's old-school movie magic doing its job. Number 5. Connery hired his own Bond writers. Sean Connery didn't just show up and read his lines. He reshaped them. Unhappy with the dialogue, he brought in British screenwriting duo Dick Clement and Ian La Frenais, the same team he'd worked with on the unofficial Bond film Never Say Never Again. Their job was officially to polish Mason's lines. In practice, they ended up rewriting large chunks of the film's dialogue, sharpening the wit and making Connery's character feel unmistakably wryly British.
And we convinced this young man sitting across from me to get involved, and he had nothing. He had a script that didn't work.
This is a big reason the Bond theory has such legs. The very writers who once scripted Connery's 007 were quietly Bondifying Mason. Every dry one-liner, every arched eyebrow of a comeback traces back to that decision. Connery understood his own myth better than anyone, and he made sure Mason wore it well. Number 6. A Ferrari versus a Hummer through San Francisco. The centerpiece chase is pure chaos, and it's built on a gorgeous mismatch. Connery's Mason commandeers a hulking black Hummer H1 and goes bulldozing through the city, while Cage's Goodspeed grabs a bright yellow Ferrari F355 Spider to give chase. A nimble Italian supercar hunting a military tank down San Francisco's roller coaster hills. It shouldn't work, and that's exactly why it's fun. Bay was also nodding to history here, staging the pursuit on the same kind of steep, plunging streets made famous by the 1968 classic Bullitt. The sequence leaves a trail of destroyed police cars, a shattered water truck, and a runaway cable car in its wake. Fans of 90s action will remember every screeching, crunching second of it. It's excessive, it's absurd, and it's one of the defining car chases of the decade. Number 7. The destroyed Ferrari was a fake. Now for the twist that car lovers find hard to forgive. In the finale of that chase, a runaway cable car comes crashing down a hill and flattens the beautiful yellow Ferrari into scrap. Watching an F355 die is genuinely painful, unless you know the secret. According to the movie's own bloopers and eagle-eyed fans, the Ferrari that gets crushed wasn't a real Ferrari at all. It was reportedly a fiberglass replica, built on the bones of a humble Pontiac Fiero, dressed up to look like the genuine article. Real F355s were far too expensive to obliterate for a single shot. So, the Ferrari you mourn is essentially a kit car in a costume. Legend has it the folks at Maranello were not remotely amused by the impersonation. Number 8. Tarantino and Sorkin secretly punched up the script. The Rock has one of the most crowded, chaotic writing histories in 90s action. The credited screenplay went through David Weisberg, Douglas Cook, and Mark Rosner. But behind the scenes, a small army of uncredited script doctors passed through. Among them, reportedly, were two future legends, Quentin Tarantino and West Wing mastermind Aaron Sorkin. Yes, that Tarantino. Yes, that Sorkin. The tangled credits also sparked a real fight. Writer Jonathan Hensley did significant work but was denied an official screen credit by Guild arbitration, and Michael Bay was so furious he penned an open letter blasting the decision as a sham and a travesty. Keep this messy screenplay in mind, because our bonus fact reveals the single strangest consequence any of these writers could have imagined. Number 9. Connery produced it and shielded his director. Sean Connery wasn't only the star, he was also a producer on the film, and he used that clout to protect his young director. Michael Bay was still early in his career, and he was clashing with Disney executives who were second-guessing his work on set. Bay has told the story of heading off to a tense meeting with those executives when Connery, dressed in golfing gear, asked to tag along. When Bay walked into the conference room with the legendary Sean Connery at his shoulder, the executives were visibly stunned. Connery then stood up for Bay, insisting he was doing excellent work and should be left alone to make his movie. That's the kind of backing most first-time blockbuster directors can only dream of. A screen icon fighting your corner. Number 10. Bay faked the chase with cheap tricks. Quick pause. If you're loving these behind-the-scenes secrets, do the thing that actually keeps this channel alive. Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to Rewatch Club so the algorithm stops hiding us. Now, back to that famous chase. For many of the tight in-car shots, Michael Bay didn't use elaborate rigs at all. By his own account, crew members would simply rock the parked car back and forth and wave lights past the windows while Bay stood just off camera making engine noises with his mouth. The actors reacted, the camera stayed close, and the brain filled in the speed. It was faster and far cheaper than staging the real thing. And honestly, you'd never guess. Some of cinema's most intense motion is just a director going vroom. Number 11. The score was built in 4 weeks flat. That pounding, heroic soundtrack is one of the most influential in action history, and it came together at ferocious speed. The music was principally composed by Nick Glennie Smith, with Hans Zimmer crafting the main themes, and it was reportedly recorded in about 4 weeks. This was the first collaboration between Zimmer and Michael Bay, kicking off a partnership that would score many of Bay's later films. But the real legacy is what came after. Those chopping, driving melodic hooks became a blueprint for action soundtracks, and especially movie trailers for years to follow. If you've ever felt goosebumps during a big cinematic trailer, there's a good chance you were hearing the DNA of The Rock. A 4-week sprint became an industry template. Number 12, it's a farewell letter to a fallen producer. There's a quiet, emotional layer to The Rock that's easy to miss. The film was produced by the legendary team of Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, the duo behind Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop. But Simpson died in early 1996, roughly 5 months before the movie reached theaters. So, The Rock carries a dedication to his memory, making it the final film to bear the full Simpson-Bruckheimer partnership.
The film is dedicated to the memory of Don Simpson, director Michael Bay, who got his start in advertising.
Knowing that adds a bittersweet weight to all the bombast. The last collaboration of a producing team that helped define the sound and swagger of 80s and 90s blockbusters. Beneath the explosions and one-liners, the movie is also a goodbye. Fans who grew up on that era of high-octane cinema will feel the poignancy of that final credit. Number 13. Michael Bay hated the way it looked. The Rock was Michael Bay's first film shot in the ultra-wide 2.39 to 1 aspect ratio, using the Super 35 format to get that sweeping cinematic frame. You'd think a director this obsessed with spectacle would have loved it. He didn't. Bay was reportedly unhappy with how the release prints turned out, feeling the format compromised the image quality he wanted. He was so put off that he avoided shooting in that wide ratio again for years, not returning to it until Bad Boys 2, by which point new digital tools let him control the final look far more precisely. It's a fascinating glimpse into a perfectionist's frustration. The movie looks epic to us, but the man who made it walked away irritated by the very format that framed it. Number 14. An art house label put it in the Criterion Collection. Here's a genuinely surprising badge of honor. The Criterion Collection is a prestigious home video label devoted to what it calls important classic and contemporary films, the kind of art house and world cinema masterpieces film students worship. And nestled in that rarefied catalog is a loud, explosive Michael Bay action movie. The Rock was selected for a special Criterion release, an unusual honor for the genre. Even more telling, the great critic Roger Ebert wrote an essay supporting its inclusion, arguing it rose to the top of its class thanks to a witty screenplay and genuine craftsmanship. When a bombastic summer blockbuster earns a spot alongside the most revered films in cinema history, you know it struck a rare chord. It's the film snob stamp of approval slapped on a movie about rockets and rogue Marines. Popcorn cinema canonized. Number 15. Critics and crowds actually loved it. It's easy to lump 90s action films together as brainless noise, but The Rock broke out of that box. Roger Ebert handed it 3.5 stars out of 4, praising it as a first-rate, stylish thriller with real humor. Audiences agreed emphatically. Moviegoers, surveyed by CinemaScore, gave the film a coveted grade of A. For a movie that's essentially 2 hours of shootouts and chemical weapon panic, that's a remarkable level of goodwill. It remains one of the best-reviewed films of Michael Bay's entire career, a rare moment where his instinct for spectacle and a genuinely sharp script pulled in the same direction. Critics and crowds rarely link arms this tightly on a summer blockbuster, but The Rock earned respect from both sides of the aisle. Number 16. The cast is stuffed with future favorites. Look closely at the smaller roles, and The Rock becomes a treasure hunt of familiar faces. One of the F-18 fighter pilots glimpsed late in the film is played by Jim Caviezel, years before he'd star in The Passion of the Christ and lead the series' person of interest. Tony Todd, horror's unforgettable Candyman, shows up as the ruthless Captain Darrow. John C. McGinley, later beloved as the acid-tongued Dr. Cox on Scrubs, plays a Marine captain. Character actor royalty Willie Garson appears too, and Raymond Cruz, who'd become the terrifying Tuco on Breaking Bad, turns up uncredited as one of Hummel's men. It's the kind of deep-stacked ensemble you only fully appreciate on a rewatch, spotting tomorrow's stars hiding in yesterday's background. Number 17. It crushed Tom Cruise at the box office. The summer of 1996 was a heavyweight brawl, and The Rock landed a knockout punch. On its opening weekend, the film stormed to number 1, knocking Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible off the top of the charts in the process. It also set a milestone for its studio, scoring the biggest opening weekend ever recorded up to that point for a live-action Disney film. From a $75 million budget, it went on to gross over $335 million worldwide.
We got involved with it when Joe Roth, who's the head of Disney now, purchased it for his own company. He wanted to produce it.
Landing among the top-grossing films of the entire year. Not bad for a director on only his second feature. And speaking of consequences no one saw coming. Hold on, because our bonus fact is about to reveal how this box office hit ended up tangled in real-world geopolitics. Number 18. No one ever really escaped the real Alcatraz. The entire plot hinges on Mason being the only man ever to break out of Alcatraz and live. It's a thrilling hook, and it plays on one of America's most enduring mysteries. In real life, the federal penitentiary on Alcatraz officially recorded no successful escapes during its years of operation. Dozens of inmates tried. Most were caught, shot, or presumed drowned in the freezing, treacherous currents of San Francisco Bay. The most famous attempt, a meticulous 1962 breakout, ended with the men vanishing without a confirmed trace, their fate unknown to this day. The Rock takes that haunting real-world uncertainty and answers it with a fantasy. What if one man truly made it out? The movie's premise is fiction stitched directly onto genuine, unsolved history. Number 19. The ending hides a JFK conspiracy. Blink at the finale and you'll miss one of the wildest narrative grace notes in the whole film. Throughout the story, Mason is defined by a secret, the location of a microfilm he stole and hid, containing classified government information he refused to surrender. In the closing scene, Goodspeed retrieves that microfilm from its hiding place in a church, and the film cheekily implies that the documents reveal the truth behind the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It's a throwaway button, delivered with a grin, but it retroactively reframes Mason's entire imprisonment as something far bigger than a spy squabble. The man wasn't just a prisoner, he was sitting on one of the 20th century's greatest conspiracies. Only The Rock could smuggle the JFK mystery into a popcorn action climax. Number 20, it earned a genuine Oscar nomination. For all its explosions and swagger, The Rock wasn't shut out by the establishment. The film picked up a real Academy Award nomination for Best Sound at the 69th Oscars. When you rewatch it, that recognition makes complete sense. The movie is a symphony of controlled chaos, gunfire echoing through stone cell blocks, rockets screaming across the bay, that thunderous score punching under every set piece. Sound design is doing enormous heavy lifting to make the mayhem feel visceral and immediate. It didn't win the category, but the nomination is a quiet acknowledgement that beneath the blockbuster bravado sat real technical artistry. It's a nice reminder that action movies done with this much craft can absolutely earn a nod from the same academy that usually favors quieter fare. Number 21. There was almost a sequel. The Rock ends on a tantalizing thread. Goodspeed walking away with a microfilm full of explosive government secrets, and Michael Bay actually toyed with pulling that thread. Bay has said he had an idea for a follow-up that never developed past the concept stage. The premise: Goodspeed and Mason on the run, hunted by their own government precisely because of the dangerous secrets on that microfilm. Picture the chemist and the spy as fugitives, dodging the very agencies they once served. It's a genuinely intriguing direction, blending conspiracy thriller paranoia with the odd couple chemistry that made the original sing. But it never got past a spark of an idea, and the story ended where it did. Somewhere out there is an alternate timeline with The Rock 2, and honestly, we'd have watched it in a heartbeat. Bonus fact: the movie that helped start a war. Now the payoff we've been teasing, and it's almost too strange to be true. In the run-up to the 2003 Iraq War, Britain's intelligence service, MI6, received reports that Saddam Hussein was ramping up chemical weapons production. A key source described the nerve agent as being stored in glass containers. That detail helped fuel the case for war. There was just one problem: chemical weapons aren't stored that way. But nerve gas is depicted in glass spheres in exactly one place: The Rock. According to the official Chilcot inquiry, investigators concluded the source had likely lied, apparently drawing his fake intelligence from the movie. A Michael Bay action film filled with invented science seeped into real-world spycraft and helped justify an actual invasion. Screenwriter David Weisberg later called the whole thing obvious nonsense any expert would have caught, and a tragic legacy for the film. Nearly 30 years on, The Rock still stands as the gold standard for smart, explosive 90s action. A popcorn thriller with a brain, a heart, and Sean Connery's swagger holding it together. Which fact melted your mind the most? The Bond theory or the movie that fooled an intelligence agency? Tell us below. And here's your mission. Should you choose to accept it, like this video, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe. Because unlike Alcatraz, Rewatch Club is one rock you'll want to be locked into. We've covered a run of war and military films lately too. Tell us which was your favorite and whether you want another. So what movie should we break down next? Drop the title below.